So, a huge military crisis just exploded in the Middle East, and it's seriously putting our whole global system for preventing war to the test. What we saw in early 2026, this massive escalation between the US, Israel, and Iran, it pushed the entire region right to the brink. And it brings up a very old and, frankly, a very uncomfortable question.
And here it is. Is the global system that we've all built to stop major wars, is it actually broken? I mean, this isn't just some academic debate, right? It has massive real-world consequences. And this crisis is a perfect and scary example. So to really get our heads around this challenge, let's just start with the facts. What actually happened?
All right, so let's break it down. What exactly went down in February 2026? We're going to look at the chain of events that basically ignited this firestorm. And believe me, it all happened incredibly fast. Okay, so picture this. The morning of February 28th, the United States and Israel launched this huge military operation, hitting targets deep inside Iran. It only takes a few hours for Tehran to hit back, launching their own missile attacks on American and Israeli facilities all over the region. By the time the sun set that day, the UN Security Council was scrambling to hold an emergency meeting, but honestly, the fighting was already in full swing. That speed, how fast this all went from 0 to 100, is absolutely key to understanding the chaos that came next.
Now, as you can probably guess, both sides have completely different stories about why this all kicked off. So let's dig into those clashing perspectives, because that's what created the diplomatic deadlock that followed.
What we're looking at here are basically two totally separate realities that just can't be squared. On one side, you have the US and Israel, who are framing this whole thing as a lawful, defensive move. They're saying it was absolutely necessary to stop nuclear proliferation and get rid of an existential threat. But then, on the other side, you've got Iran calling it what they see as illegal aggression, a straight-up war crime that violates their sovereignty. And they're pointing the finger right back at the international community, saying, you failed to stop this. When your starting positions are that far apart, well, finding any kind of diplomatic off-ramp becomes almost impossible. And all of this brings us to the one institution that's supposed to handle exactly these kinds of messes, the United Nations. But, as we're about to see, the UN's job as the world's referee, well, it comes with some pretty serious limitations. I mean, think about it. The UN was founded way back in 1945, right after World War II, with this incredibly powerful mission to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. It was designed to be the place where diplomacy could beat out conflict. And the main tool it has to do that? That's the Security Council.
But here's the catch. The Security Council has this one built-in feature that changes the entire game: the veto. It gives the 5 permanent members, that's the US, the UK, France, Russia, and China, the power to just stop any major action in its tracks. All it takes is one no vote. Now, the idea was to make sure the world's biggest powers were all on the same page before anything major happened. But, as you can probably imagine, it is super controversial.
And this really gets us to the heart of the whole debate around the veto. Supporters will tell you it's a necessary evil, right? It's the thing that stops the world's biggest nuclear powers from going head-to-head. But critics, they argue it just paralyzes the council, making it completely impossible to hold those same big powers accountable when they decide to go it alone. And right there, in that tension, you can see the central dilemma of the entire United Nations.
So here's the bottom line. In this crisis, the UN could condemn the attacks. And it did. It condemned both sides. But what it could not do was actually stop the fighting. And this just perfectly highlights that huge, persistent gap between what the UN is supposed to do, maintain peace, and what it can actually do to enforce it, especially when one of its most powerful members is directly involved.
And look, when diplomacy fails on this scale, the consequences aren't just abstract geopolitical debates. They're felt by real people in the real world. We're talking about an immense human cost. Civilians killed and injured, homes and hospitals just wiped out, entire families forced to run for their lives with literally nothing. And the ripple effects? The shockwaves from this kind of instability? Things like skyrocketing energy prices and broken supply chains, those are felt way, way beyond the battlefield. Eventually, they reach all of us.
Okay, so where does all this leave us? For this last part, let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture here. Power, politics, and what this whole crisis really means for the future of how countries deal with each other.
Well, there's this school of thought in international relations called realism. And basically, what realists argue is that when it all comes down to it, major powers are always going to put their own national security first. Full stop.
It might sound a little cynical, but from this point of view, when push comes to shove, an action like the US-Israeli strike isn't a breakdown of the system, it is the system. It's just power politics and survival in action.
But there's another way to look at it. Institutionalists argue that, hey, wait a minute, those global rules and norms, they still matter a lot. They believe that even the most powerful countries need to be seen as legitimate on the world stage if they want to succeed in the long run. And that institutions like the UN, even with all their flaws, provide this crucial framework for cooperation that no country can just totally ignore. And these two theories, they perfectly capture this fundamental tension that's right at the heart of our international system. It's this constant tug of war, right? On one side, you have a country's right to do what it thinks is best for itself. That's sovereignty. And on the other, you have the need for a set of collective rules to govern the whole planet. And honestly, this crisis, it's a textbook example of that exact struggle playing out in real time.
And all of this leaves us with one final lingering question. This conflict is a pretty stark reminder that our global institutions are really struggling to keep up with the power politics of the 21st century. So the deepest question we're facing isn't just about who's right and who's wrong in this one instance. It's about whether our systems for diplomacy can evolve fast enough to stop the next war. Or are we just destined to watch conflict constantly outrun our best efforts to find peace?